Hello everybody, welcome. Today I'm honoured to be joined by Richard Donnell from Hometrack. Richard has been analysing and commenting on the UK housing market for over 20 years. I think he's the best there is. Richard, thank you so much for joining me. May I start with saying I'm a big fan.
Thank you very much.
I think your research is second to none, and it has always been a real go-to for me. So I think what you do is superb. But I'm interested in how you do what you do, and how did it all come about? How did you get into property research?
Well, I was always interested in property. I did a degree in real estate.
Okay.
And then was always the guy doing the spreadsheets with my colleagues when we were doing development appraisals and valuations and things. And then I managed to land a job at Savills working in the research team, maybe with a view to sort of becoming a chartered surveyor.
Okay.
But I got bitten by the sort of analysis bug. And in my 12 years at Savills, I just learned about how much value there is in data, what you can do with analysis and how it can help people and businesses make better decisions. And then the opportunity came up to take that and go and work at Hometrack, which is very much a data and analytics business. It's all about how do we turn data into information.
How far back are we going? What sort of year did you get?
That was in 2005.
Okay.
So again, I'd been 12 years at Savills.
Yeah.
I think people got surprised. I went to a relatively small business, this little startup data business, but
Yes,
I kind of
I
knew the value is in the data and the analysis, and that's what they're fantastic at, which is how can we take information. It was early prop tech. It was very early data science, building a valuation model that you could literally value property with to originate a mortgage. So today Hometrack does about 20% of all mortgage valuations with a computer model, about 50 million valuations a year in total. But there's so much more we can do, and I think data and the use of data and analytics to drive decision making for consumers and for businesses is probably worth a 3 out of 10 on that journey. So the fire still burns bright in kind of where we can go, and so the opportunity when Hometrack got acquired by Zoopla 2 years ago, huge opportunity to sort of take even more data that's out there and just keep driving insight and value for this enormous market that I don't. Even policymakers, people, everyone's still 1,000 questions they want to know, and it's how can we kind of keep doing that? And
it constantly evolves and changes and that kind of thing. It is vitally important because I'm always interested in what you guys put out. But it struck me, it is quite a niche market, and yet it is so powerful and so. I'm a property bore, so I find it fascinating, but I think it genuinely is helpful to people. And yet there aren't that many key players in it. You're top of the pile, but the pile is, not to take anything away from you, but there's not many people in the pile.
I say the housing market's far more complicated. Everyone tends to focus on sales, what's happening to house prices, but there are more lets a year than there are sales. So that's an enormous market that's grown over the last 10 years. You then got what government are up to with stamp duty and tax changes, and almost, I think to a degree, the policymakers are almost trying to sort of catch up with the market. There's a leading edge of a market there that people, consumers are setting very rationally. And I think that's the interesting thing for me is big business, government is trying to sort of look at what's happening next in the market. And I think a lot of analysis is focused in the rearview mirror on what has happened, what's been happening, very house price focused. But actually what people are interested in is about my house, my area, my neighbourhood. What builders are interested in is my developments, my sort of future sales pipeline. So there's still a huge opportunity to take all this data but make it far more real and accessible to people and businesses making decisions.
It's giving somebody the confidence to take that big decision in their own unique circumstances, assessing that house on that street. You publish reams of data and graphs and intel. How do you suggest people analyse it for their own personal benefit?
Well, I think that's where the advent of just data and analysis has gone. I think obviously on Zoopla you can come and find the value of your home, you can find a lot more about what's happening in your neighbourhood. I think a lot more sites and tools available out there now for people to sign up to alerts, to track the market in their area. So I don't think many consumers are out there sort of using all this data and building their own charts for their own area. They expect all of the big brands, us included, as a leading property portal, to be delivering them the information they need to make their decisions. And that's a mixture of browsing and tracking what's happening in the market. Zoopla did a big survey last year where they found that 45% of people said they're active in the market, but they're just browsing, waiting for that perfect property to arrive for them to buy. And actually, so people want information all the time, and it's down to everyone to keep delivering it to them on how they want it.
You and I have talked property on many different occasions, but I've not kind of understood how what is your typical day like? What happens to the day of a property analyst?
Well, I think it's looking at what questions you need to answer. And again, it amazes me how big businesses, chief execs, right the way through to local agents, to people on the ground. It's amazing the questions that people still can't find answers to. So the first thing is, what are you trying to do? What answers are you trying to answer? And then I think the other secret thing is to not get into sort of opinion or comment. It's to let the data do the talking. Mm-hmm. Let's really work the data hard to answer in an easy to understand way what people want to know. So it's the main piece is around, you need to have really good people behind you taking all this data, taking it on a journey to get you from raw information to clean information to data you can trust and analyse.
Yeah.
And then it's about doing a lot of hard work, a lot of analysis to then come up with the answers. And then with the answers, it's about how can you scale it out and get it out to as wide an audience as possible, whether that's putting out a press release, doing a report. But again, the opportunity for us is how can we get this information onto every single person's property for them? It's
powerful stuff, and it's information that people need in their moment of almost crisis. They're trying to take a big decision with clarity and confidence. But at the same time, they are reading the press, and the press seem to be all over the place at the moment. Any thoughts or advice on what people should take away with them? What should they listen to? What shouldn't they listen to?
Well, I think there's not one housing market is the first thing. So when you read the headlines, and again, I think a lot of consumers get a sense of what's happening in their local area to a decent degree, and that's only going to keep improving. So there's a kind of national narrative, there's a regional narrative, but again, people don't live in a national or regional housing market, they live in their local area. I think when it comes to people making decisions about whether to buy or to sell or to get on the housing ladder particularly, I think you've got to take a long-term view, and the average household now is living in their home 20 years. I mean, that's much higher than it was back in the 1980s. So if you're getting on the housing ladder, you've got to think longer term, plan to be in that home for the next 10 years. And it's just all about your life stage, and is it right for you to buy a home? Have you got the deposit? Is now the time to be moving? And do it for the right reasons, for your own personal reasons, and then ultimately give or take in house price inflation what that market gives you, basically. Don't go chasing it. I know a lot of people who've delayed buying because they thought house prices were going to collapse. I know a lot more people that have probably regretted just not getting on and making the decision when they're ready to make it than trying to wait for house prices to fall.
It's ever so complicated, isn't it? Because it's where you live. It's where you bring up your family, it's where you put down roots, and it's your sanctuary, and it's your privacy, and it's everything. It's not all about the money.
For people buying in their own home, I think buy-to-let has enabled people to sort of invest at arm's length. I think in the 1980s, people were almost investing with their own home, which is where you get into the big problem. So I think now people are being able to compartmentalise making a decision about a home I want to live in for the long term versus actually, the arm's length investing is being enabled differently through buy-to-let mortgages.
You've seen lots of cycles, and I always countenance that the definition of a marketplace is it goes up and down. That's what a market is. You've seen plenty of that over the last, goodness knows how long, Richard. Any thoughts on where we are or thoughts for the future?
It all depends where you are around the country. Absolutely, the housing cycle has been underway since 2009. If you're in London, it feels like that cycle is probably coming to an end because house prices are flat to falling into the central areas. But go to Manchester and Birmingham, go to sort of the big English cities, regional cities where the economy's growing.
Employment prospects are up, and if
housing
you've got
affordability is good.
Yeah.
And house prices there are rising at between 5 and 8%, which is sort of twice the level of earnings growth. And that's where housing turnover continues to rise. There are some other markets where you could argue the cycle hasn't even got going yet or is in the very, very early stages. And
Tell me more.
That's linked to local economies. I mean, really, housing markets are only as strong as their local economies, basically. And, I guess the worst case scenario is Aberdeen, where we've seen the fall in the oil price.
But that can bounce back.
It did, and it's had a big impact on the housing market, though. Price is down 20% in the last 4 years. So, yes, things are now starting to stabilise there. So, I think, depending on where you are in the country, it's all about your local market, with obviously the caveat that the national sort of performance of the national economy ultimately has an impact on everything.
Sure. And just turning to kind of digital technology, And you work in a fairly fast-moving world, and it seems that the technology is getting better, it's getting quicker, your data sets are getting better and more accurate, more useful. Any thoughts on where the future is for that?
I think the market's going to keep evolving. I think the availability of data, technology's evolving.
Yeah,
I think
quite an exciting time.
It is, absolutely. I don't think it's going to be a necessarily massive step change. I think it's just going to be a rapid evolution. And again, really focused on what do consumers want, what information do they need, how can we deliver it to them.
It strikes me that the longer you collect data, the better it gets.
It does, yeah. And I think it's about building models that are sort of forward-looking. So rather than doing a house price index that might be sort of 3 to 4 months in the rearview mirror, it's giving people more information. And I think this is the point about there's a lot more to be done to help people kind of make an informed view about what they should be doing in the near term.
Well, Richard, I can only wish you keep doing it. Brilliant. Nice talking to you. Thanks a lot.